Hey, what's up? What are some of the greatest fantasy movies of all time? Now, the thing about fantasy movies is there's a lot of fantasy movies, but there's not like a lot of great fantasy movies. There's a lot of good ones, a lot of bad ones, a lot of very good ones, but some great ones. It's really, really hard to make any kind of great movie, much less a fantasy movie, but there are a few, and there are some that are so good that they become popular. They become so good that like people that don't even watch fantasy movies watch that movie and know about that movie. And the first one that comes to mind is Conan the Barbarian. Conan the Barbarian is probably one of the greatest fantasy movies ever made. And what's interesting about Conan the Barbarian is that back when it, back in the day, like it was, you wouldn't expect it to be a great fantasy movie. In fact, when I first watched Conan the Barbarian, I was expecting like a really B movie because there was a lot of B movies coming out in fantasy, and a lot of the time, like you can expect it to be bad. You still enjoy it because fantasy movies have action in it. It's got action, it's got special effects, it's got like it kind of takes you to another world, so and we watch it for that. You watch that. There's also like in sword and sorcery movies there was just like nudity, and they tried to make these sword and sorcery movies like R-rated to as far as they can go with the R rating without making it X-rated. There's a lot of like sword and sorcery movies that they just put so much nudity, sex, everything into it. And they knew that like if they just kept it R, people were gonna watch it, people were gonna see it. If they put too much in there, and they're gonna just make it X and no one's ever gonna see the movie. So that's why they kind of like toned it down to some degree, but they pushed the envelope as much as they could. I find that's not something they do anymore. They're really careful about what they put in movies, the subject matter, everything. They're just really careful about they make it a little bit too much kind of correct or proper, as if there is a correct or proper, rather than just someone's opinion of what's correct and proper, right? And and back in the day, they were like, let's just make something outrageous. Let's just make something over the top. Let's make something amazing. Like think about like some of the movies that came out that were just like over the top and amazing, and they just wanted to make it great, like Mad Max. And then like Beyond Thunderdome, when it went to Beyond Thunderdome, it was already like it wasn't Mad Max anymore. It was like post-apocalypse, factions trying to like steal gasoline from everybody and food because they lived in a desert and they lived in these like makeshift cities and whatever it was. They try to make everything over the top. Even something like Toxic Avenger was one of these things where Troma was always doing that. They were trying to like Troma was the company that made the company that made the Toxic Avenger. If you haven't seen it and you want to see like a like an over the top movie that's just like a little bit out there and but really good at the same time, you should check out Toxic Avenger. But I do think it's not like everyone's cup of tea, because it's just like it's only people that like extreme over the top movies. It's violence. There's a lot of like stuff in it. But I think it's a great movie, and I think it was good enough that Troma just it put him on the map, and it made Troma just do like sequel after sequel after sequel after sequel, and other movies that were like that, and whatever it is. So, that's the thing. Conan the Barbarian, they did it right, and they did it for the right reasons. I think the reason was with Conan the Barbarian, they made a great movie, and I think a lot of it had to do with the right decisions, making the right decisions of how are we going to make this movie, and all the decisions were correct. Getting Arnold Schwarzenegger was the right decision. I heard they were thinking about other different actors like Sylvester Stallone, whatever. Like, no, that guy, he wouldn't have made a great barbarian. See, the thing about Conan the Barbarian is he is literally like, his ancestors, like Arnold Schwarzenegger's ancestors could have because he's from Europe, and his ancestors could have literally been barbarians. I mean, the guy's big, he's full of muscle, and and he's got that barbarian accent, and that's how barbarians would talk. They wouldn't talk proper English, proper anything. They would just have like they weren't like educated. They know how to swing a sword, and then they knew certain stuff, but a barbarian wasn't necessarily like refined or educated or had any manners or any, they weren't rich people. They weren't like nobles. They weren't, anything like that. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I mean, he looks like a barbarian. He does talk like a barbarian. I think that's what was perfect about it. So they put him. But the thing is with Conan the Barbarian is they had a good director that told him what to do and what to say and how to say it. Because if you look at something like Conan the Destroyer, it was still Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it wasn't really the same Conan the Barbarian. Because in the first one, he was smart. And in the second one, he was fooled by that queen that said that she was gonna bring his lost love back from the dead and reunite them again. And he believed her. And he believed her on her word. You know what I mean? Believed her on her word. And if you remember the first movie, it started with Conan being a kid and his father showing him his sword that he made himself. I'm pretty sure he made that sword himself, right? The Atlantean sword, I believe, and that Arnold Schwarzenegger still has on his wall whenever he's in a video. That sword is on the wall. You know, he loves that movie. In the first one, his father taught him, no one can you trust, not man, not God, not animal, not anything, right? And then he shows him a sword, like this you can trust, right? And so he was brought up, he was taught to only trust his sword and trust no one. And in the second movie, he believed the evil queen, that not only like did he believe her, that she said that she could bring someone back from the dead, literally, and reunite them, just on her word that she would do it for him if he did this huge, gigantic quest that went there was like he would risk his life to do this quest, and he believed this queen after she sent horsemen to capture him in nets, right? And that was the other thing about it, was that they captured him in nets. Literally, horsemen threw nets at him and captured him. So instead of him being this badass, like strongest warrior in the world kind of guy, whereas like Arnold Schwarzenegger won the most like the best bodybuilder in the world like 7 years straight, right? You know, it's like instead of him being some kick-ass guy, he was literally captured by a few horsemen with nets. In the first movie, it was just him and a couple of his friends that beat all of Thulsa Doom's horsemen. Literally the whole army, just on cunning and putting like the right like spears everywhere and all kinds of little tactics and whatever and just strength and steel. You know, and in the second one, he literally is not even that same character. He gets caught by this queen's horseman, and then he goes to bring this princess to this thing. I think that Conan the Destroyer was a good movie, but it was what people kind of expected Conan the Barbarian to be. Whereas like that movie made a lot of people think, oh, fantasy is legitimate. Fantasy is a real thing and it's legitimate. So I'm going to say that that's one of the number one fantasy movies. If you haven't seen it, you got to see Conan the Barbarian, right? It's really good. I don't think it's everyone's cup of tea though, and I think that's why it hasn't become like something huge like Game of Thrones. So another one I was thinking about was going to be like the best movie. I'm going to like touch on Game of Thrones because like I personally couldn't get into Game of Thrones, but I liked it. The only thing about Game of Thrones is I feel like I wanted more fantasy in Game of Thrones, right? And I think I would have liked it more and watched it more if it had fantasy in it. But I'm going to say Game of Thrones is definitely up there with one of the best fantasy series of all time. I don't think it's necessarily like, in my opinion, it's not the best, but I'm gonna count it as up there as one of the best because like a lot of people do like it. A lot of people think it is the best, and I think it serves that niche of people that want to see that medieval fantasy drama that is fantasy, but not that much fantasy. Like I remember watching the first episode, I was like, okay, I'm all for this. This looks like my kind of thing to watch, right? And it was just like kind of overly violent for no reason, or like just to be violent. And I remember movies doing that. They're just trying to be violent just because there are people that just like really violent movies and they wanted to cater to them. But with Game of Thrones, it's like, so that was that. And it also felt like, where was the fantasy? Like, where are the monsters? Where's the wizards? Where's everything? And it's finally, then I was like, and then when I saw like the Targaryen woman, the Queen of the Dragons, and then I was like, oh, cool, here, now it's fantasy. So she gets burned, but she doesn't get burned. She gets put on fire, but she doesn't get burned because she survives. So that's cool. That's like a fantasy element. And then I remember that one scene where she had her little baby dragons flying around, and she was talking to that other guy who was leading that huge army and whatever, and they were talking different languages and whatever. And I noticed, I was like, oh cool, look at these dragons flying around and like breathing fire and stuff like that. But then I found like, oh, it was just a few dragons, like little dragons too. They're like little baby dragons. Right, is that it? Just a few dragons and the rest of it has no fantasy in it? And that's my thing. I think that George R. R. Martin is a good writer. Even the book, like I tried reading it. I remember like a while ago, like back in the day, I tried reading Game of Thrones because somebody recommended it to me in a bookshop. They're like, "Oh, you got to read Game of Thrones." So I picked it up and I started reading, and I just like, it's an interesting fiction. It's actually interesting characters. There's a lot of drama. Very, very medieval, back in the day drama, and it was kind of realistic. It was harsh back then, and it was kind of the books are harsh, and it was kind of realistic. But it was like the lack of real fantasy elements in it made me not really like it. But I'm going to say Game of Thrones I'm just going to call it one of the most popular fantasy novels of all time. Like Lord of the Rings is another one where I think it's actually good. It's done really, really well. The books, I read through The Hobbit and then Lord of the Rings, the first book, second book, and like half of the third book. And I read up to the point where they threw the ring into wherever they were going to throw it. They got rid of the ring, they threw it. I think also Gollum also fell into some kind of pit or whatever. And after that, they were just moving on. They were just going on and on and on. And I think the writer just like, I can't get into his writing. Just the way he writes, I can't get into it. The movie is good. They put great actors in there. They had great special effects and everything like that. I didn't actually watch. I saw The Hobbit. I think I saw some of Lord of the Rings. I have like one of the DVDs and whatever. I just have to watch it. I really haven't, but it's definitely really, really well made. In my opinion, it's not that great, but a lot of people really, really liked it, and some people told me that was some of the greatest fantasy of all time. And maybe it is because it's kind of recent fantasy. It's like early 2000s or something like that fantasy. So, yeah, I guess it's, some of the greatest fantasy of all time. But everyone's heard of it. It's not like some fantasy movie that no one's heard of. These are popular fantasy movies. I'm going to say these fall into the category of pop fantasy. Where if you look at something like Lord of the Rings, it's a lot different than if you look at something like Excalibur. Like Excalibur or not Sword and the Sorcerer. I didn't like Sword and the Sorcerer at all. But Excalibur I don't think Excalibur was a great movie, but I think it was a great fantasy movie. And I watched it and I was like, this is kind of boring, But a friend of mine like put that on, and she was just watching it a lot all the time. And I kind of watched it a few times more, and I was like, yeah, it's actually pretty good. It's actually pretty good. I mean, there's Merlin, there's all the knights, and there's like there's the quest for the Grail, and it's the villains or whatever. It's great. Do I think it's one of the greatest fantasies of all time? I don't think it's the greatest fantasy of all time, but I do think it is a significant enough story, because the story's already the King Arthur myth. The Round Table, Camelot, and the Quest for the Grail, that myth has been going, so much. They did so many stories. They did so many movies about that. However, out of all of the other movies about that's definitely one of the best. I mean, I just think it's a little bit, to me, it's like, there's something about it that's just like, it's not exciting enough, I think, as a movie. I think it's a good movie. I think that it's legit. Like, I feel like if you like it, I get it. Like, I like it too. I just don't think it's as good as I wanted it to be or whatever it was. So, but it's a great story, and it's a great version of that myth. It's a great version of that old tale, because there's a lot of other versions of that story that aren't that good. So I do think that that's a great movie. The Sword and the Sorcerer is not that great. There's a lot of like really cool. There's the Roger Corman movies. They're not like the best movie of all time, like the Roger Corman movies, but they're the best B-movie sword and sorcery kind of stuff that you can pretty much see. because that's just a different genre. I think it's a different, because it's different when you make a B movie than when you make a Hollywood blockbuster like A movie. I think it's completely different because the budget is different, the kind of movie it is different. You know, like in a B movie, in a cult film, you're gonna put a lot of sex and violence in it. You're gonna put that. You're gonna put you put different interesting characters. You put a lot of action scenes in it, violent like freaking sword fighting and stuff like that. Maybe some like puppets that are supposed to be monsters. The special effects are conventional. The special effects are not that fancy. They're like low budget. You know, so it's really a different kind of film, right? Made differently because of the resources they had. Like literally, if anyone has enough money, they could literally make a great movie. And all they need to make a great movie is enough money. Literally enough money. You don't need them. Well, you kind of need some kind of idea and whatever, but if you can organize like a movie together, if you had enough money, you can make a great movie and chances are it'll be great. Because all you got to do is just put the best people in that movie. Put the best director, put the best actors, like literally like the best Hollywood actors that are around right now, put them in the movie. You know, if they want to do it, if they want to do the movie. But the thing is, they will do the movie if you pay them enough. They'll do the movie, right? And so put the best directors, hire the best music people to make the music for it, hire the best costumes, the best special effects. And if you have enough money, you could do that. And it'll probably be a great movie. And the person that made it will probably be like credited for making the movie, but they really didn't do anything. They just kind of put it together with everyone else's work, you know? So that's the thing. So there's a movie called Krull. So Krull is another one where it's like hard to say that some people like it, and I've heard some people say that it's a great movie. You know, Krull, however, I liked it. I like Krull. I do like Krull. I just think that Krull, I took the journey, I took the Krull trip and watched Krull. I have Krull on DVD. I do like Krull, but the thing is that like Krull is, they wanted to make a great movie. I heard it was very, very high budget. They had a lot of money. I just felt it was just a little bit, it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but I think it was still good. And I'm gonna say a lot of people do like Krull, so I'm saying that like it's legitimately liked as a great movie. So I'm putting Krull in there as that. But the real movies that I like, for example, Clash of the Titans, the older Clash of the Titans. So there's the old Clash of the Titans with the Harryhausen special effects. That Clash of the Titans is a great movie, fantastic. Greek gods and goddesses, an epic journey, Medusa, magic weapons, demons to fight and destroy, a winged frickin' Pegasus to ride, and a mechanical owl that kind of just flies around and is made of little mechanical things that kind of like doesn't even belong in history. They did not make metal mechanical owls back then, but they put one in the movie, and so what? It's a great owl. I like the owl. And in the second one, I did watch some of like Clash of Titans, the second one. I also picked up the Clash of Titans DVD to watch the entire thing and really like think about it and be like, do I like this remake? And what I feel like with the Clash of Titans remake is like great special effects, but they weren't Harryhausen special effects. So they're kind of a different special effect. They're great special effects. They're great like computer generated special effects. But I think that the effects are good because they're computer generated and they're going to be good no matter what you do. But the design of the special effects weren't that great. You know, if you look at the design of the Medusa in the first Clash of the Titans, it's a cool looking Medusa, even though it's a little, you know, like clay figurine that moves around, you know, with the stop motion animation. Whereas like, you know, there was this one scene in the new movie where they were just fighting scorpions, and literally they were just giant scorpions. And why couldn't they make them like scorpion-like monsters or something like that? Like, why just make them scorpions? They looked boring to me. Like, it looked like they didn't put like a good art director in it. They didn't put some guy to really like say, okay, instead of, why make them scorpions? Make them some kind of crazy fantasy character. Make them like something else. Make them scorpions, but then make them like scorpion people, right? Like scorpion men, and they're like they've got they got the claws, they got the tail, and whatever, they can sting, but they're like on four legs and two arms, and they have swords or something like that. That would be cool. Because I do think in the first one they had that the witches or whatever with the eye, and that was just a crazy scene. There was a lot of crazy stuff in there, and they were just really good. It was just a great story, and the costumes were great, and the art direction was great, and there was just so much great about it. It's just like whenever they do a remake, I think like when you make a remake of a movie, it's a good remake if it was like a great idea, but it didn't work as a movie that much. Like what they did with the Dune movies. They thought that David Lynch's movie was a failure, it was a bad movie, and they made a few remakes on it. I think they're all kind of worse than the David Lynch. David Lynch one is my favorite. Science fiction, science fantasy about the future and all kinds of like, I mean, they had witches in it. So you could say that's like some kind of fantasy there. Yeah, they had witches. They had a lot of stuff that wasn't really technology based. There was like The Voice and things like that, like these magic powers, whatever they were. There was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of magic in it. Yeah, they had science fiction and they had like technology, but they had a lot of magic in it also. And so there was that, and I think that even though they felt like David Lynch's film in the 80s was not like the best film and not a good adaptation of Dune, I think like I think the other ones that came out just weren't really better. Even, maybe some people liked them better. I just think they were better. But Clash of the Titans, just the way they were, like, and out of the Harryhausen films, because I saw like Clash of the Titans and I also saw the Jason and the Argonauts and whatever, and honestly, like, I felt like with Clash of the Titans, there was way more special effects with the Ray Harryhausen special effects, the stop motion special effects. There was just more of them in Clash of the Titans, and it was just a better movie also. So a lot of people did like Jason and the Argonauts, the old one, and yeah, and then like, but I don't know, I thought Clash of the Titans was a better movie. There was that. Then there was another one that also came out like a way long time ago, and this is The Neverending Story, right? This is like, The Neverending Story was about a little kid who he skipped school one day, whatever. He ran into this little, like, some kind of a store or whatever, and he went in and he found this book. He somehow got into this place. It wasn't even his place. It was just some random store that was like abandoned. There was nobody in it. He finds his book and he starts reading it, and it's this never-ending story. It's like, and then this story unfolds, and it's a great movie. I would say, like, sometimes they'll describe a movie as family-friendly movie. Oh, it's a family movie, but it's not really a family movie. It's a kids movie. Not everyone in your family is gonna like, kids movies. You can't just call it family if it's just for kids. There are some movies that are family movies, family-friendly movies, like a lot of the Disney movies are family, It's something that, like, kids can watch and adults can watch, and they can all watch it together. I would say that's something like that, because it's about a kid, but you can watch it even if you're not a kid, because it reminds you of when you were a kid, because that's how you felt and that's how you thought, and that's the journey you wanted to take as a kid reading a fantasy book. You wanted to be on that journey, and that's what it was about. This kid, like, opening a book and then being on this journey, this fantasy journey that he's reading, and everything that he's reading is real, and it's around him, and it's this, like, world that, like, talks to him and stuff like that. And that's really, really amazing. That's really awesome. And that story was great, and it had live action characters, it had puppets, really cool original puppets. I don't know if it was Jim Henson. It might have been Jim Henson, but it was great puppets and stuff like that. And I thought that was a great movie. And it's definitely one of the best, like, fantasy movies of all time, and everyone should watch it. I do want to hit on what's his name? Harry Potter. I do want to hit on Harry Potter about these being great movies of Harry Potter. The thing is, like, I haven't watched a lot of Harry Potter. I watched some of the first one. I don't think I watched all of the first one. I liked what I saw of the first Harry Potter. And I read like half of the book. I downloaded the ebook on Harry Potter. I still have the rest of it. I'm going to finish reading it at some point. But I downloaded the ebook, and I have the ebook. And I'm going to say that's one of these things. So I can't say that it's like the best fantasy movie of all time because I didn't watch all of them. But I'm going to say that because of its following, it's one of the biggest fantasy stories of all time. I mean, we're talking about huge. I think J.K. Rowling is like the most paid author, fantasy author. I don't know if like author in general, just any author of any genre, but she's one of the most well-paid fantasy authors of all time. Like literally, like no one makes as much money as J.K. Rowling based on her Harry Potter books. And I do know that Harry Potter, like in England, where J.K. Rowling is from, or she's from the UK. I don't know if she's from England, but she's from the UK. She's from some part of the United Kingdom. It's such a place where like you can go from one place to another, and it doesn't really matter if it's from any part of United Kingdom. It's pretty much all of United Kingdom knows about it and consumes it. So I know that like in the UK, in London, they've got these presentations. I think that they're like Harry Potter like live theater performances. I'm not sure 100% on that, but it could just be movies. But what I think it was is there are like live performances of Harry Potter and stuff like that. Just people love Harry Potter there because it's from England and it's something big that came out of England. That when anything big comes out of England, England owns it. For example, like any English musical bands like Pink Floyd or something like that, England it's huge there. Michael Moorcock, who writes great novels and whatever it is, you can pretty much get his stuff outside of England. You can read some of his fantasy work, but in England, literally in the bookshops, there's like entire shelves of Michael Moorcock books. So it's in England. So Harry Potter is huge. It's really bigger in England than anywhere else in the world, but it's worldwide. Everyone knows Harry Potter. I know there's like several movies, and I do want to watch them at some point. For some reason, I just haven't really picked them up, even though I had a chance to pick them up. I just haven't really picked them up, but I will. And maybe just watch like one or two of them to say like what I think of the movies. Because I watched like some of the first movie, and I thought it was good. I thought the characters were good. It was pretty cool. I like the idea that this kid is like this horrible, like he's in such a bad like family situation. He's adopted. He's not even in his real family. And then everyone like doesn't treat him well. It's sort of like that Cinderella movie. And then all of a sudden, they find him and they're like, oh, Harry, you belong in this like, wizard school and whatever. And then they take him in and he joins this family and now he's happy. And I kind of like that about the character. He went from being unhappy to happy, and the rest of this, series is about him being happy and going on his adventures and learning magic. And I think that's cool. And I do like that kind of movie with the kid and magic. And I think that's another one of these. Harry Potter is, in my opinion, a family, like family movie. But if you look at something like Looney Tunes or something like, like, for example, a cartoon or whatever it is, I mean, a lot of cartoons are just for kids. They're like, adults do not want to watch Blue's Clues. They don't want to watch Sesame Street. That's just for kids. It's made for kids. They call it Kids and Family, but it's made for kids. So that's kind of a huge one, and you have to kind of include it in some of the best fantasy movies of all time. And so there's a lot of other ones. I mean, you could say. Now I'm gonna say like some personal like opinions. I really like the B movies, the sword and sorcery B movies that came from the 80s and whatever, because like in that era there was just some great stuff. I like sorcery, like fantasy movies because they have a lot of action, a lot of like swords, good fighting choreography, like great battles and stuff like that. Lots of cool magic, cool wizards. Cool monsters or like, whatever great, like magic items, journeys. I like your, sort of like Dungeons and Dragons adventure, kind of like that. And a lot of the times, you can appeal to people who like fantasy by just putting fantasy elements in the movies. Like, for example, there's a really popular fantasy series that's out right now called The Witcher. And The Witcher I couldn't get into it. But a lot of people love The Witcher, and because it's like season after season are coming out and people are watching it. And people don't even like watch fantasy, watch The Witcher. You know, a lot of people say it's a ripoff of Elric of Melniboné because he looks a little bit like Elric of Melniboné. I mean, he's kind of, I mean, his eyes are different, but he has different eyes than human eyes. He uses magic, but kind of in a different way than Elric and whatever it is. And I personally don't see anything else about it that's, that's like that. But honestly, what I think about any like copies of Elric, I'm okay with that. I'm all for it because we're not getting an Elric movie. We're not getting an Elric movie or any of the Eternal Champion movies or any of the Michael Moorcock like stories in a movie. We're not getting those movies, the fantasy ones, the ones that you want to watch, not the ones that they tried to make a long time ago and it wasn't a good movie and they just never tried again. And so those fantasy movies, that was like, it's weird because they're making so much stuff from other authors and other people that wrote books. They're making movies from mangas and animes. They're making movies of Neil Gaiman's stories and stuff like that. Neil Gaiman will write the book, then then make the comic, and then make the movie. He just hasn't made the album yet, but he just goes all out with his stories and stuff like that. They just do it. And some other stuff like, they just never make into movies. Some great authors, like for example, Alan Moore is a great author. He makes comic books and stuff like that. And are they fantasy? Yeah, they're kind of fantasy. He made the Watchmen comic book, which is like some of the best comic books of all time and stuff. And they made it into a movie, which a lot of people didn't like. I thought the movie was good. I like that they changed it because, some of it was the same, but a lot of it was different. The ending was different. So I was happy with that because it's like, oh, wow. I actually feel like I thought it was just gonna like, the ending was spoiled because I read the comic, but it wasn't spoiled. It was still a good ending. So yeah, so there's that. I probably missed a whole bunch of like great fantasy movies, but there's more. There's a lot more, and these are just a few of, I would say, some of the best like fantasy movies of all time. And I really wish they make some more. I haven't really seen any great fantasy movies recently that have come out. Not like a fantasy movie that's just a great movie. It feels like the last one was Lord of the Rings and whatever it was, but there probably was a few, and these are just some of the ones. If you haven't seen any of these, definitely check it out. And some of these for everyone, not for everyone, but sometimes it is for everyone. Like for example, a movie like Witches of Eastwick. I thought that was a great movie. I'm gonna say it's a fantasy movie because it's got witches, it's got magic. You could say witches could be and the devil could be in like horror or fantasy or urban fantasy. This was an urban fantasy. There was nothing horror about it. Jack Nicholson playing the devil and then Cher playing one of the witches and whatever. There's nothing horror about that movie, about that movie at all. But it's a great movie. It's, is it one of the best? Like, it's one of the best. I'd say yeah, because like there's not a lot of witch movies that like that kind of movie. That's a specific that is its own subgenre of fantasy because it was just a great story, a great movie, really well done. And I'm gonna say that's a great movie. I really liked it. I thought it was fantastic. I know my friend didn't like it when he watched it, but I thought it was great. I thought the movie was amazing, and so. And so, that was good. There's also like science fantasy and science fiction movies that came out that are pretty good. I would really like some more great fantasy movies to come out. I don't know what it is right now because of like the AI, like special effects. They can do so much with special effects. It's the time to make a fantasy movie, a great fantasy movie, because you can do whatever you want right now with special effects and computer generated everything. You could do so much with it that it's perfect to make a fantasy movie because they don't have to look bad. It doesn't have to look like someone in a rubber suit or little like, model spaceships blowing up or fake or like really bad looking. They can make everything look super cool. And so that's why like right now that's why right now like superhero movies are so big because they can do a lot of special effects with it, But so that's just a few. There's definitely a lot more. Let me know what you think. Let me know what's your favorite, like one of your favorite fantasy movies of all time. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a like and a subscribe if you want, and I'll see you guys in another video later. Take care.